You're listening to FlamesNation Radio, episode 35, the final weekly edition during the 21-22 season. We're brought to you by DoorDash and by Eau Claire Distillery, makers of Rupert's Whiskey, the official whiskey of the Calgary Flames. I'm Ryan. He's Shane. Hi, Shane.
Hello, everybody.
And it was a weird, with the last time we recorded, we were teeing up Game 5 and said hopefully there'd be more games. There weren't. They just played Game 5, but Game 5 sure was a lot of hockey crammed into one game. There was a Flames lead. There was a Flames lead that disappeared. There was a Oilers lead. There was the Flames clawing back to tie. There's the Flames momentarily going ahead in the third period, and then the goal not counting. There was a lot of stuff crammed in that one game. And then, of course, Connor McDavid did Connor McDavid things in overtime. And the Flames lost 5-4 in Game 5 in overtime. And that was the last game the Flames played. It's been, I think 6 days since that dagger happened because of the way we scheduled things. So, Shane, we've had some time to get away from the emotion of everything and just to relax and breathe and go outside and see our loved ones and play with animals and children. With the benefit of that kind of perspective, what did you think of Game 5 and in particular that goal?
That goal that actually, to summarize, the best explanation to summarize that goal came out of the potential goal scorer himself. Blake Coleman scored a goal that was disallowed due to what the NHL deemed as a distinct kicking motion. And Blake Coleman said, go online and look at the debate, and how, with that much disparity, how could there be anything distinct about it? And that's pretty much, I was like, you're not wrong there, sir.
I think he made a comment on at the last media day with the Flames where when he was joking with us that, he's like, well, it wasn't like I reared my foot back and kick it to the uprights or to the goalpost or whatever. There wasn't much distinct. He dragged us basically, for those of you who can't remember it because of the mental scarring from it or a lot of drinking in the interim. Basically what it was Michael Backlund comes in on the right wing. He drives the net. He puts a shot that squirts under Mike Smith's arm and starts trickling towards the goal line. Blake Coleman's driving the net looking for the loose puck. His arms are sort of tied up with Cody Ceci as he's driving the net. And he's in the process of Coleman's in the process of falling over. So he's trying not to fall over. His
right foot clips Smith's pad too. Like his right foot clipped it and kicked back. So he's on one leg.
Yeah, he's sort of spinning on his left foot, almost pirouetting, sliding his foot in sort of an effort to both stop and not completely kill himself hitting the post, because we discovered this also on Tuesday. Nikita Zadorov broke 3 ribs crashing into the net against Dallas. So the nets suck to crash into at any speed. So Coleman trying not to fall over, trying not to crash into the goalie, trying not to be injured crashing into the net, trying to battle Cody Ceci for position. And he basically drags his foot, momentarily makes contact with the puck. That was still like a wobbly puck. It wasn't stationary. And, the puck goes to the net. There was no kick. I would say this. I don't think there was a kicking motion. He basically dragged his foot to hit, and as soon as he hit and he almost got towards the net, he sort of did a pirouette and sort of, jumped past the net after the contact was made.
I believe he was trying to stop, and there's no rule against stopping and having the puck hit your skate while you stop. So there's no rule against that. That's not a distinct kicking motion. That's goals like that are allowed to happen. If the guy's going to the net, he stops and it goes off the outside of his skate. And someone said that on the panel. They said outside of the skate's fine, inside of the skate's not good. But we saw a goal against the Flames. I don't know if it was this year or last year.
It was this year.
Where the guy kicked his foot. Like he legit, there's no other word to describe it. Kicked his foot out to make sure that the puck would go off of it.
He angled his foot.
And he angled it and went in. And that one counted. And that guy literally lifted his blade off the ice halfway.
I haven't seen a good explanation for the league. Over at Sportsnet, Eric Francis talked to some folks at the league office, Colin Campbell and a couple other people. They're like, I don't like the explanation that they were given. That's not, if we want to get around to it, The Flames lost in 5 games. They lost 4 out of 5 games. They had leads in games, in all the home games. They had multi-goal leads that they did not hold on to. Daryl Sutter put it very bluntly. It was the situation that in games 1, 2, 4, and 5, the games were basically tied in the third period, and the Flames really only got the next goal, the goals they needed from the players they needed to win game 1. And there's all kinds of reasons. I think we want to get into it. I'll say this. I asked Daryl Sutter, or actually I asked Brad Living on Saturday when we had a chance to talk with him. It's sort of like, is it too simplistic just to say that one of the reasons that the team lost is because you didn't have Chris Tanev and then everything kind of went all topsy-turvy? And he said, he's like, he cop that it wasn't the reason. There wasn't one reason why the Flames didn't do it. But like he addressed the Tanev of it all, where he talked about a bit about how, Tanev is a stabilizer. He plays a lot and he plays well. And, Oliver Shillington, granted with a bum shoulder, a much different player during parts of the playoffs than he was previous. Nikita Zadorov without Tanev, Zadorov and Goodbranson were essentially the second pairing. I love the roles that both those guys play this year. Probably not an ideal situation for them. And as a result of having Tanev and having Zadorov and Goodbranson as the de facto second pairing, the Flames, I don't think it's unfair to say that the Flames basically went with a 1A, 1B defensive group during this season. They used a bit of, they were doing a little bit of stuff in either way. Hannafin and Anderson were, used in a lot of different situations, and so were Shillington and Tanev. But the flat out third pairing was Goodbranson and Zadorov, and then when you great in their role. But when you put them in, when you elevated them, when you make the 1A pairing a defined 1 pairing, because your 1B can't be a 1B anymore, and then you throw your third pairing into a second pairing role, like it's a lot of guys were sort of used differently than they were used in the regular season, because we talked about, what do you say, puck luck. Flames were extremely fortunate in the regular season that no one important got injured at any point. I mean, they had Jacob Markstrom playing through something after he came back from the COVID stoppage. I don't know if it was just cardio. I don't know if it was whatever. Anyway, he missed a couple. They played Dan Vladar in back-to-back games during the Carolina-Florida road trip, and you don't do that if Markstrom's 100%. So Markstrom was 100%, so they rested him. That might have been the only significant injury they had all year. I mean, they lost Sean Monahan just after the trade deadline, but Sean Monahan was there
for 2 weeks there.
Yeah, but like you lose your fourth line center. You lose your fourth line center after the trade deadline. Okay, you lose you basically have your Shillington got to rest when the Flames already had a playoff spot pretty much sewn up. I'm pretty sure Shillington would have played if that was the playoffs, but he didn't because it wasn't the playoffs and they had the ability to rest him. And it was probably the smartest move they could have made.
And you give Connor Mackey some experience, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, but I think it's the situation where they happen to have a significant injury in the playoffs to the worst, arguably I could say probably the only other player. Like if you wouldn't want to lose a top line player, sure. Like losing Gaudreau, Gaudreau or Tana or Gaudreau or Kachuk or Lindholm would suck. Yeah. Like they're just important players. I would argue that against Edmonton, you don't want to not have Tanev and you don't want to not have Backlund, because those are the guys that sort of make the mix work in terms of you have a Tanev to eat up the tough deployments for defense, and you can have Hannafin and Anderson used in offensive situations. You have a Backlund to eat up the tough moments against particular players, and you have the Lindholm line is able to get a little bit of more offensive zone stuff. So, I mean, the Flames I would say I don't think they play their game much at all in the series. I think for stretches of game 4, yeah. For stretches of game 5, yeah. But I mean, I think they lost in 5 games because the other team is better in at least 3 of those games.
Yeah, game 3 was bad. Game 3 was just bad all around. They got back to their game a little bit at the end of the game, but it just really wasn't. Game 1 obviously wasn't the way the Flames may have won it, but it wasn't their game. That was the Oilers game. And that's what they did. They got into running around. And the Oilers forwards were able to constantly enter the zone against the Flames' battered up defense because they knew they wouldn't be able to step up into them. Like you got one guy with broken ribs, you got one guy with a torn labrum, you got dislocated shoulder as well. You got another guy that's got a bum shoulder, and they couldn't execute the strategy. And I hate to say it, but when Zadorov and Goodbranson got matched up against guys that were too fast for them, they just didn't have the speed to counter it entering the zone. So the Oilers were able to take advantage of a hurt up, banged up Flames defense. I really didn't have too many issues with the forwards, to be honest with you. Everyone was like, they were always pretty much in the right spot. The Oilers scored most of their goals on the rush. There was hardly any sustained pressure goals that went in, and when they did, they were point shots that were screened through the goalie.
And not just the rush, I'd say odd man rushes that were directly like the other thing. So Bradford Living, he made two really good points. I recommend anyone.
I loved what he said.
If you get a chance, especially when the season's over, listen to Brad's pressers and listen to Daryl Sutter's pressers because you learn stuff. With Brad's really astute. And the point Brad made to my question of the importance of Tanev, and you got to have depth to make up for losing guys because you're going to lose guys. But his other point was he was asked, I forget who it was. It was either Eric Francis or Wes Gilbertson. I forget, gentlemen. I forget if I got who asked this question wrong. I apologize. But it was a very good question, so I want to get credit for it. They asked about what how they thought Jacob Markstrom played in the playoffs. And Bradford Living, basically said, he'd go to war with Markstrom anytime. And he sort of made the same kind of point we made on a previous podcast. And, when we talked on Twitter in text and stuff during the season, he said, essentially, back the tape up like 40 seconds to stuff that happened before the puck got to him. Because a lot of this was the case in the Dallas series where, all the goals that went in against Markstrom, especially at even strength, were preceded by, somebody makes a mistake here, somebody makes a mistake there, and all of a sudden, boom, he's got a really open net. And a lot of these were, Flames get too far up in the offensive zone, turnover, 3-on-2 or 3-on-1 back the other way. What are you going to do? Or, oops, power play chance, bloop, puck gets past the guy, breakaway for Hyman, breakaway for Nugent Hopkins, breakaway for Draisaitl, things like that. And would you think, again, would you have loved Jacob Markstrom to be the, you don't want to be the sarcastic mix and a save guy, but would you love if he mixed and a save in one of those crazy good chances? Oh, of course, it would have been fantastic. Did he? No. Did he do it throughout most of the season? Yeah, that's why he's going to probably finish second or third in Vezina voting. I don't think he's going to win, but
Shesterkin,
Igor Shesterkin's going to win the Vezina. And coincidentally, his team's playing, it's got playing the Final Four right now. So good work, general managers. It looks like he did a good vote because he was good in the playoffs too. But, arguably the second or third best goalie in the league this year with Jacob Markstrom because he was just consistent. Like he very rarely fell off a cliff, and he happened to have a bad week when all of his defense also had a bad week. And could he mix in any heroic Herculean?
That's if our complaint is the fact that Jacob Markstrom wasn't able to make literal hero saves that all of the people critiquing him wouldn't physically be able to even comprehend, then is that really an actual criticism of Jacob Markstrom?
Jacob Markstrom would have had to be Mika Kiprasov or the reincarnation of George Vezina himself in order to give the Flames a chance to win based on how the Flames were playing defensively in front of them. Yeah. And it wasn't to say that the Flames were consistently terrible, completely out of position, making, being a complete clown show. They weren't exactly like a junior A team in terms of their defense, but they made lapses at key times against a group of forwards you don't want to make lapses against. And I'm sure our bosses up north would appreciate this, but I thought Edmonton played a really good series. I thought Jay Woodcroft managed his bench well. He thought he managed his team well. I thought he was hilarious in a lot of his pressers. I'm sure, the Snow family, Kelsey Snow mentioned it was on Twitter that was really nice of Jay Woodcroft to give a shout out to Chris Snow before he really answered any of his questions. The guy just won a playoff series, the second playoff series he's ever won as a head coach. The first time the Oilers have played and or beaten the Flames in 31 years in the postseason. First thing Jay Woodcroft does is give a shout out to Chris Snow. That's just classy. You can't really argue with that. So
I've never had an issue with Bridget. I actually said the worst thing the Oilers could have done from a Flames fan perspective was promote Jay Woodcroft, because I actually really liked him as a coach. I liked him what he was doing in Bakersfield. I liked where he came from. I like his background as a video coach before he came in, and how he could see the game and how detail. I think that's what the Oilers needed. The Oilers needed the details of the game and the big players. Like, hey, you do a lot of good things right. Let's shore up these three areas.
I think they have a good mix of voices on that bench, because Dave Manson's an old school hockey guy. His son Josh plays for Colorado. Won't that be awkward this week? But they have Dave Manson, they have Glenn Gulletson, who when Glenn Gulletson was here, I'll say this. I really like Glenn Gulletson. He really easy guy to talk to. Really, he thinks the game really well. There's certain intangible qualities that head coaches need to have in order to basically have some semblance of authority. And some guys are really good at it, and some guys aren't. And I think it's a skill you can learn. Like Shane, you and I have worked various jobs in our lives. There's some bosses you have that just some bosses, they might be, completely competent, but there's certain intangible qualities that make you think that guy's a good boss. I'm going to follow him. And some that make you go, I don't really like the guy. And, for whatever reason, Glenn Gulletson just, he lost the room in Calgary in the second year, and everything sort of fell off a cliff. But that happens sometimes. But you can't really argue with Glenn Gulletson's ability to be a good bench coach, a good power play coach, a good, he runs the forward group pretty well in Edmonton. Dave Manson runs that blue line admirably, considering that, a lot of those guys are beaten up. And if we're being completely honest, a lot of them might be past their best years. Like Duncan Keith,
Duncan Keith's well past his best years.
Chris Russell, not a lot of tread left to tire. But I think, the Oilers you gotta give the coaching staff credit for getting what they could get out of them. Same with the goalie coach, Dustin Schwartz with working with Koskinen and Mike Smith. So Mike Smith is one of the most bizarre people in the NHL. And I mean that as a compliment. He's a goddamn throwback, and I love him for it because he's a cowboy. It's like, if your weirdest friend became an NHL goalie, that's Mike Smith. And
he plays
it works for him.
So unorthodox. I have Oilers fans I have more Oilers fans friends than I do Flames fans friends.
That must be fun for you this week.
Yeah, growing up, it was terrible. I just lent into it. It's the only way you can survive. Now we all truly know what it was like to be a Flames fan in the 80s, minus 86. But they say it's a nightmare to watch, because you have no idea whether he's going to be he's going to hit everything or he's going to let everything in. Like, you never know. And it makes it, your heart already is racing in situations when you're a fan watching the game, hoping your team can pull it off, because there's nothing else you can do but watch. When you throw in the fact that your goaltender likes to flop around or shoot the puck up the middle for a stretch pass that could possibly be picked off, it just adds more stress. So, you know what? Be thankful you're still experiencing that, Oilers fans, because we're not in Calgary. We're looking forward to what's next. So
yeah, and I'll say this. I mean, I thought if we're gonna boil it down to if your parents, my parents, our spouses, like, why the Flames lose to the Oilers, I would say I think the Oilers got to their game much more consistently than the Flames did. I would say that the Oilers' key players are better than the Flames' key players. I think Edmonton's defensive structure made it life easier on Mike Smith than the Flames' defensive structure made it on Jacob Markstrom. I don't think the Flames played their defensive structure the way they should have, the way they have in the regular season. I think that's why Markstrom saw so many good shots. And I think up front, I mean, if you look at the number of Oilers that had really impressive series, I mean, obviously McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Kane, Nugent Hopkins. I thought Ryan McLeod had a really underrated series.
He was pretty good for a defensive, his assignments. Ryan McLeod actually came through pretty clutch.
Kyler Yamamoto in a few, like the game 4 game-winning goal. Kyler Yamamoto winning battles down low against bigger dudes. I mean, he won the battles as much as the Flames lost the battles.
I mean, that puck doesn't get to the net unless McDavid drives it there, like the sheer willpower man he is. But Yamamoto's still there. Like he's still there. He's still there for the.
Well, I mean, the game 4 one, man. One in Edmonton to the Flames tied the game off of the 135 shot.
That was Nuge that got that one.
Nuge made the shot, but down low, the guy.
No, Nuge got the game winner in game 4.
Nuge got the game winner. Yeah. Watch the tape. Yamamoto goes in and gets the dump in. and
Oh,
then
that's what you're
retrieves
talking
it and then swings it back to the point. So
Yeah, yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of good plays at key moments by the Oilers players got them to the other side, and the Flames didn't get those nearly as often as they needed to. And granted, I mean, this is systems are what systems are. But I mean, I think if the Flames are fully healthy, I think this is a 7-game series.
I think
I don't know who
I
wins
think
though.
the real area was the denying of zone entries. Like the Flames were almost methodical, sending the one D man over, forcing the dump, and then having the other D go back and get it. And they weren't able to execute that. And because they weren't, they ended up hemmed in their own zone more than they ever had been all year. Whether it was the Oilers' speed, whether it was the fact that they were banged up, it doesn't matter. The Oilers were able to get in, and the Oilers were able to get shots to the net, to the slot quickly, and they were just throwing them on net and hoping they went in. And I will say, some of, like, early on in the series, games 1-2, some of those goals were goals that probably shouldn't go in. But no, you can't expect every player to play at the top of their game every single second, every single game. It's just not. You have to. When a player has an off game, other players need to step up. That didn't happen for the Flames, and other players were hurt, other players were out of the lineup, and it didn't work the way they needed it to work, and that's why they're going home. So
yeah, and then the Flames ended up let's the last time the Flames played postseason hockey in Calgary, like in front of fans, was 2019. They got their asses kicked. People inside the organization have used that phrasing. Colorado ran their show. The Flames won that first game, and then Colorado said, "You're not getting anything more." This series, I think the Flames were in it, and this series was preceded by the Flames winning a very entertaining 7-game series with Dallas. So in 2019, the Flames put up their 2018-19 Pacific Division Championship banner in the dead of night. They did not have a ceremony, no pomp, no circumstance. I was doing a junior game, in September, and I was sitting at the sideline and I went, "What the hell is that?" And they was just that's how they put it up. They didn't mention it.
probably do the same with this one.
I think they're going to do something for this one. I think this is the kind of one where, let's this way, if certain people are back, I think they make a big deal of this.
Yeah. The 18-19 one into the 19-20 COVID season was.
But the 2021 banner, or the 21-22 banner rather, I think they feel they should celebrate, and I'd agree with that, because I think this was a distinct step forward for the organization. I mean, if in the grand scheme of things, the Flames lost the series, the Oilers won the series. If you have to play the series 100 times, how many times do McDavid and Draisaitl go off and go ham like that? I don't know, probably not 100. And I think that's probably the consolation prize for the Flames of, well, you lost the series in 5 games, but it took a goddamn all-world performance from 2 of the 3 best players in the world. What do you think? 2 of the best 4 or 5 players in the world, McDavid and Draisaitl?
Two out of 6. The list. I don't usually rank 1, 2, 3. I just put players in tiers, because I think ranking and who's better than who. I'm like, well, everyone's better at something else than someone. Like Draisaitl's passing. The players voted it, and to be honest, this season on one leg, or this playoff series, I saw it. The Draisaitl and his skill at passing the puck and finding seams and everything. I was like, okay, no, I get it now. I get why the players voted him as the best passer in the player poll.
He's
I
got
see
eyes,
that.
man.
So
he's got eyes. He can put it anywhere.
Yeah, so I saw that, and newfound respect from me for Leon Draisaitl. Now, I'll still bash his defensive play just because it's fun to do, and Oilers fans get mad at me for it. But I just do that for fun. He in all seriousness, top tier. That McDavid and Matthews are the top tier. I would put Draisaitl in the one just below that. That's how I do tiers. I don't do 1, 2, 3. So that's just how I do it. So
yeah.
So we're still talking. It's a very exclusive company. Those tiers. There's not that many guys up there.
Yeah,
Maybe 7, 8.
At some point, we'll be lured up to Oilers Nation headquarters and have a beer at the pint or somewhere with the ON brass, and then we'll get really into arguing with them over the rankings of stuff, because that's the kind of stuff we need to do to fill out the website in the summer months, just yelling about who's better than who. But that's the fun part. And honestly, I mean, it's been a fun month and a stressful month, I think, for a lot of people on either side. So hopefully everyone had some fun. It's just going to be, Shane, a really interesting
Yeah.
Shoot, like, was it?
Now it's time to talk about the stuff we all
we're-
avoided talking
We're
about.
recording this on June 1st, and so this will go up on June 2nd, which is a Wednesday, Thursday. But so here's the thing. So as of the draft is going to be June 6th and 7th in scenic Montreal, Quebec. The Flames have 3 picks, none of which are in the first round. They pick in the 2nd, 5th, and 7th rounds. So it's not going to be exactly,
Not going to be a banner.
They're not
expecting to be a banner news.
They're not getting Matt Coronado based on the picks they have.
Yeah.
They're not getting another Matt Coronado. And then things get interesting. Actually, things will probably get interesting beforehand. But so on as of 10 p.m. Mountain Time on July 12th, a bunch of guys become restricted free agents, assuming they get qualifying offers 2 days before. We assume they will. And so among the restricted free agents include Oliver Shillington, who had a hell of a season, Andrew Mangiapane, who had a hell of a season and will be a year away from unrestricted free agency, and another player who had a hell of a year and will be a year away from unrestricted free agency is Matthew Tkachuk. Mm-hmm. And up front, pending unrestricted free agents include Nikita Zadorov, Trevor Lewis, Erica Branson, and some guy named Johnny Gaudreau. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting. Elliot Friedman, our friend over at Sportsnet, reported that the Flames aren't playing tiddlywinks or twiddling their thumbs. Basically, Johnny Gaudreau's plan was to talk to his agent this week. He probably talked to him already because it's Wednesday as we're recording this, right after a U.S. long weekend. So probably after the long weekend, he probably picked up his phone, or maybe he went in person and he's talking to his agent about what he wants to do. And according to Elliot Friedman, Flames are being, quote, very aggressive in terms of trying to get deals done, or at least trying to make offers to Gaudreau and Tkachuk. I don't think it's a secret that those two are the Flames' best players this year. I think those are the 2 best players aside from maybe Jacob Markstrom. And so those guys are gonna get paid. Gaudreau was asked if he'd be comfortable signing long term. He spoke very, very eloquently about how much he loved the city of Calgary and how grateful he was to be welcomed here by people. And so he seems very open to coming back. Matthew Tkachuk was asked if he'd be comfortable signing long term. He said sure. So if we're taking people,
I mean, you're not going to say no. You're still under contract.
I mean, okay, let's. So we never, like, I'll say this: Brad Treliving is all poker face. All poker.
Oh, always.
Brad,
you got to get Craig in there if you want to get some answers.
Yeah, but Brad's all poker face, and he asked Brad something. If the most poker face person in the organization is definitely Daryl Sutter.
Yes,
I'm pretty sure. If on a Friday, if you really got lucky, you can get Daryl Sutter to admit that the weekend's the next day. If you're lucky, if he's in a good mood. Brad Treliving's close to that in terms of being tight-lipped about things. And Brad Treliving went out of his way to say basically Johnny Gaudreau is going to be, he has potential to be one of the best Flames of all time, really important player. They're going to move heaven and earth basically to sign him. Do whatever it takes to sign him, wherever they can to sign him. He said that multiple times in multiple venues, which is, that's basically Brad Treliving lavishing praise upon you. Brad Treliving giving you the keys to his house, letting you sleep in his bed. Him and his wife will sleep on the couch. Johnny, you can have the master bedroom. Like that. That's the amount of that's basically Brad, doing backward somersaults in terms of praising a player.
Yeah. He doesn't go out of his way. He'll usually say something like, "Oh, I worked hard," or he's
a good player, and we'll see what happens.
Good player, or they'll say, "Oh yeah, he's learning his way," or he'll say something about some sort of grocery store trip. Those are Brad's go-tos.
Here's another example. So, what draft was it? 2019 was when the Flames. 2019, I think it was 2019, 2017 or 2019. One of the drafts I was at. It was when Michael Backlund's contract was coming up. I think it was 2019.
19 because he signed a 5-year deal and it's got 2 left.
Yeah. So we, Pat and I were there. We're like, hey, what's going on with Backlund? Backlund's contract's coming up. You're heading into the last year. What's going on? And so, Brad Treliving basically said, we know we have some time left working on it. It's really, he's a good player. He does a lot of things for this organization, and we'll see what happens. So the Flames, by the way, loved Michael Backlund. They still love Michael Backlund. At that point, everyone and their dog internally was saying to Brad Treliving, "Holy cow, man, Michael Backlund is so good. You'd be an idiot to let him walk." And Brad knew this, and I think Brad was of the same opinion that, yeah, we're definitely going to re-sign this guy. So knowing that they love the player and we're definitely going to try to re-sign him, the best we can get out of Brad at that point was, yeah, he's a pretty good player, and I mean, he does a lot of important things for this group, and we'll
That's
see what happens.
exactly Brad. That's Brad to a friggin' T.
Yeah. So
Was how he does some important things.
imagine how much they really want to keep Johnny Gaudreau. If not only do we skip past the pretty good player thing, really good player, important player, whatever, to we'll do whatever we can to sign him. So I don't know what happens with that. I assume the Flames are going to basically throw, I don't want to say dump truck full of money, because I think there's a point where the Flames go, okay, if we sign Gaudreau to a certain point, if you give McDavid money to him, you can't afford to ice a team. But
no, I think
at
max it's kind of a Panarin comparable.
I think so.
Panarin was all UFA years. It was into the same kind of age group, same kind of age gap. I think Johnny might be a year or two older than when Panarin signed that deal with New York. I'm not 100% sure.
Gaudreau's got better underlines and more consistent defensive profile.
Way better transitional statistics than anybody in the entire league, almost. Maybe Matt Barzil's up there. I got to recheck Corey Snyder's.
So for folks, essentially, so for restricted for arbitration cases, what teams do is teams are limited to specific stats you're allowed to use in arbitration cases. So, if Shane and I are going to be like, we're going to do an arbitration case for Andrew Mangiapane, we build a stat profile, and the agencies do this. The teams and the agencies both do this. The Flames are doing this right now in terms of prepping for potential ARB cases, and so are the agencies. What you do is you basically go, okay, here is player X who is like Andrew Mangiapane in XYZ way. You build a profile of like 3 to 5 players with similar profiles, and then you say, player X is the most similar. He got this contract. Player Y is quite similar. And he got this contract, and so on and so forth. And you're basically making a case to the arbiter. Here is what they should get because. But you're very
in 1 or 2 year deal.
It's prescribed in the CBA what stats you're allowed to cherry pick for those things. Like you can't. It has to be like for like same age, same league experience. So it's basically trying to find an apples to apples comparison. So you're limited in restricted free agent arbitration cases to say, here's an apple, here's why this guy's an apple, here's how comparable they are, give them this money. For UFAs, there's none of that. For UFAs, if Shane is Johnny Gaudreau's agent, he can go and be like, you know what, Johnny Gaudreau is the best transition player in the Western Conference. You know what, Johnny Gaudreau creates X, Y. You can pull up micro stats, you can pull up transition stats, any stat you have at your disposal, you throw at them. Because the thing is, if you do that to all these teams, and if the Flames aren't willing to pay the guy that money, you do the same thing to potential free agent landing spots and do the same thing. So if it sounds like he's trying to sell a used car, in a way you are. I mean, the 28-year-old human being who scored a crap ton of goals, but that's the way it is. And I think that's the risk you run, right?
I don't believe for 1 second that at any point of this negotiation it'll ever be about the money. I think Calgary's ready to pay them. I don't have any info on that. It doesn't matter because right now Calgary has up until free agency kicks in, Calgary has the power of the 8th year. And because of that, they will be able to outbid any team in terms of total dollars, no matter what. So right now, Calgary can offer more money than any team could theoretically offer. We know tampering never happens in the offseason, right, Pike?
Sorry, I have something in my eye.
Yeah, sorry. So the money thing, it'll never be about money. It's really comes down to preference and maybe.
Just in case any of you folks listening are getting cynical. So here's what you're not allowed to do. Let's say Shane is Johnny Gaudreau, and I'm
You're the Tampa Bay Lightning for some reason.
Yeah, let's just say I'm the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings. We got tons of cap space. So I'm going to go up to you and say, hello, Shane, how are you? Do you want to play for the Detroit Red Wings? Here's a contract offer. So you play, the rules are very specific that, you can't directly offer a player a contract who's under contract with someone else. That's a no-no. Nor can you approach their agent and say, hello, Louis Gross, would you like a contract for the Detroit Red Wings? You can't do that. But, hockey's a very small world. And, if you notice, a lot of the agents, like the Flames have like half of their team almost represented by, I think something like 9 guys represented by Newport Sports.
Yeah.
Like 7 or 8 represented by CAA. And, so the agents all talk to each other, and the agents talk to GMs all the time. And GMs, might go like, as you're preparing for pending on free agency, you might go, hey, how do your clients like playing in Nashville, for instance? How does Nashville deal with what's it like? Hey, who do you have coming up who might be looking for a new deal? We're looking for, a scoring winger. You can ask about those things. You can have broad conversations, about, we're looking for, we might be, if the Flames, are talking to other teams, talking to agents, and they go, hey, what kind of goalies you got in your portfolio? Because we might be looking for a backup to Dustin Wolf next year. Good spot. You get to play in Calgary, decent travel. You get to play 20 games behind the really good goalie. Hell, depending on what happens with Markstrom's health or Vladar or whatever, maybe Wolf's up for a chunk of the year. Who knows? So that might be a good spot. So you could talk generally. Hey, do you know anybody who might be cool with being a backup in Stockton next year? Hey, do you know anyone? Do you have anyone in your system who might be a good defenseman for Stockton next year? They don't have a lot of defensemen under contract. Might be an opportunity there. So
the agents will tell you. Agents will have the profiles and the lists of the players they represent.
Yeah.
I think even players are good for you.
Even if they don't go like, oh yeah, I have the exact guy. It gets them thinking, and then it helps prime the pump for negotiations as they come up in free agency, because you don't know who might become available. It's those things you can do. So, but I think if you're Gaudreau's camp, you know who's gonna have the cap space to potentially give you the kind of money you want. But I made this point on Sportsnet 960 with Pat and Matt on Tuesday. The teams who have a lot of cap space and the ability to throw stupid money at Johnny Gaudreau also might not be particularly good next year.
No.
And so, like you said, I don't think it'll be about money, or at least it won't be entirely about money. I don't even know if it'll be mostly about money.
It's I honestly, if he leaves for some reason, it's about preference of living. Maybe he wants a better tax situation. I don't know. I haven't talked to Johnny Gaudreau, but it definitely, like, I can almost certainly say with everything, as much certain as I can without having talked to somebody, that it won't be about money. You lay all the cards on the table, and Calgary has the cards to pay him more than anybody else. It certainly appears that it wouldn't be about money. So it just really comes down to, and Johnny's not alone in this. What does his wife want to do? People forget about that. Like it very much matters. What if his wife wants to play somewhere else, or be somewhere else, or live somewhere else? That's a very good possibility as well. Maybe he wants to be closer to his family and his cousins. He has a very close relationship with them. We've seen them in the stands. We've seen fans interact with them on Twitter all the time.
I've seen, in my dealings, I've talked to a lot of players who are from Calgary, who've played in Calgary. Sometimes you kind of like having a couple time zones or a 3-hour plane flight away from your brother or your cousin or your niece or nephew.
Maybe a little bit, because then they'll stop asking you for tickets.
Yeah, so I mean that's there's all kinds of things that will play into it, and I mean we're at Flames Nation, we're pro worker, and in that sense we mean if we don't begrudge players for negotiating no move or no trade clauses because the team agreed to them. We don't begrudge players for getting, like, if you want to say, I know folks are sometimes grumble about Milan Lucic's basically buyout proof contract. Well, he negotiated that. That was part of a contract he negotiated. So while it's inconvenient for a buyout, it's great for him, and he earned that through his play. And so whatever happens with Johnny Gaudreau in the next month, I mean, let's be honest, like he's been in the organization for 11 years. He's played 8 full seasons in the NHL, and he's been a damn good NHL player. I think at this point, he's offensively top 5 all time in terms of all the boxcar stats of Flames history. And
he can only go up.
The 4 guys ahead of him are Hockey Hall of Famer Jerome McGinley, Hockey Hall of Famer Joe Nieuwendyk, Hockey Hall of Famer Al McInnes, and Theo Fleury, who's not a Hockey Hall of Famer for reasons. But yeah, that's 4 really, 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 really good players. In terms of if you were doing a Mount Rushmore for the Flames, I mean, I don't think he's quite on it because he's fifth, and maybe Mika Kaprizov's ahead of him in terms of
He
the
would be
pecking order. But that's
definitely for Mount
so
Rushmore.
if we're stretching it, if we're going, well, what about this? If we're absolutely stretching it, you're basically looking at Johnny Gaudreau as being the fifth or sixth best Flame of all time, and he's 28 and could potentially play another 8 years here.
Exactly.
If
he signs long term and even plays half his contract here, he gets to Rushmore. He does. He's that good. He's that good. Barring, knock on all pieces of wood in every thing in your house, barring injury. Knock on everything.
If he re-signs, his jersey's going up. That's basically what the nap is.
Yeah, he'd be the last one to wear 13 if he resigns. He will be the last Flames player to wear 13.
And even if he doesn't resign, they're probably going to not. You're not exactly going to trot out 13 for anybody really anytime soon.
Not right away. No, that's Matt Coronado likes 13. I'm just saying that.
Matt Coronado will like what Johnny Gaudreau tells him to like. But that's the whole thing. So I mean, it's going to be it's going to be an interesting month or two. I have a feeling.
I think let's talk Tkachuk for a sec,
okay?
Because I just wrote an article on him here, and I truly believe it's in best interest for him. It is my personal opinion. I'm not going to be slinging it as everything. I think it's in his best interest to sign long term. I really do, because the Flames will give him a boatload of money. You just had a 100-point season. We know they talk about all the time. It's not about the goals and assists. That's true. When you play the game, it's not about goals and assists. When it comes to getting paid a contract, it is about goals and assists. Unfortunately, for whatever you want to say in the coaching realm of things, sure. But when it comes to getting paid, goals and assists do matter. And what are the odds Matthew Tkachuk has another 100-point season, another 40-goal season? What it does it at a healthy level, an injury, a Sean Monahan-like hip injury, and he's on the shelf. And if he accepts a 1-year qualifying offer, then he limits himself going forward. If you really want to pay and you want to be financially secure, now is the time to cash in on an 8-year deal. It's going to be north of 9. People, I'm sorry, I don't care what comparisons you have or what you're still bitter about the loss. He's going to get north of 9.
Realistically, I think a realistic range for both those guys I think 10. Evolving Hockey has Gaudreau at like 11-2. Oh, yeah. They have Tkachuk at 11-2 or thereabouts, and they have Tkachuk or Gaudreau at like 10-7 or 10-8. And basically, there's a 4-year age gap between the two players. So Gaudreau is 28; he'll be 36 and the deal's over. Tkachuk is 24; he'll be 32 and the deal's over. So you're catching less of the productive decline of Tkachuk than you are with Gaudreau. That's why Tkachuk would be getting more money.
Well, that and evolving wild factors in defensive impact, and Tkachuk's actually dwarfed everybody on the entire team. So naturally, that boosts him.
But realistically,
when you watch and you realize that it's a committee thing, it's not just Tkachuk, it's Lindholm and Tkachuk being able to be in their spots and do what they can do. Same with Johnny. You realize that the offensive driving force is clearly Johnny Gaudreau, and Matthew Tkachuk is very much a very important part of it. I'm with you. I think they start with 10s, both of them.
I think fair market value for them is somewhere between 10 and 11. And, if it gets closer to 10, it's because the Flames get creative and do fun things with no trades and signing bonuses and whatever bells and whistles they have at their disposal. Because I mean, if you're talking to Gaudreau and or Tkachuk, they got families to feed. This is like all due respect to both players. Right now, with where they are in their lives, this is their main means of providing for their families from now until whenever. Tkachuk did not go to university. I'm sure he could find he's a smart guy. He could do other things when he retires. Gaudreau has a communications degree from Boston College. I'm sure he can use that for something when he retires. I mean, no one's calling these guys dumb. What we're saying is their primary earning thing right now is professional hockey. So I think they owe it to themselves and their families to do what they can to maximize their payment in their competitive window. So if they get closer to 11, no one's going to begrudge them. If they get closer to 10, it might not be as much because the Flames make emotional appeals and then being like, Johnny, take $1 million less and we can afford a different winger for this spot. Or Matthew, if you take $500,000 less, we can afford this guy over here. I don't think that'll really matter to them.
I don't think it'll be a question of say that. I don't think they'll even negotiate like that. I don't think they'll bring stuff like that up. Really,
I think you're kidding yourself. You know that it comes up because if the idea is like you're right away, if you're doing the negotiation, you get Lewis Gross or Craig Oscar in a room, the whiteboard, and you're mapping out how the team looks next year. You're like, okay, run it back. Try to beat Edmonton next year in the second round.
And if we're talking about what we think they should do, I really think they should bring all these players back and they should run it back.
As many as possible.
They were good, as many as you can. I don't think we get Nikita Zadorov back. If I had to choose, two reasons for that.
You go ahead.
Two reasons for that. One, Juuso Välimäki and Connor Mackey are no longer waiver exempt next year. They're not. Whether they make the team or not, that's another thing. That's up to coach in September.
I have a feeling one is a much better chance to make the team.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think I know which one you're talking about. Two,
it's Mackey. Let's just say it. It's Mackey.
Yeah, we'll say it's Mackey. Two, Zadorov is also a guy looking to cash in probably long term and make some decent money. He's got a family. He as well, and it's a UFA. If I were him, I'd be looking for a 3 to 4 year deal north of $3 million.
And if you're, I think if you're being selfish and you're Brad living, you're going, okay, Zadorov doesn't kill penalties. That's a notch for him. He takes a lot of penalties. That's a notch for him. Mackey Goodbranson could be a pretty good third pairing next year.
Goodbranson kills penalties. Come back at a discounted price just to actually have some stability.
I think a discounted price for him would be anything short of 3.
We got 2 this year. If he wants to re-sign for the same amount, I'm absolutely okay with that.
If I'm him, I might want to raise though.
You're more worried about the young guys right now. You're getting the Shillington, the Mangiapane, Kachuk, and then of course, Mr. Gaudreau first. Then you worry about Goodbranson.
All I could, as an aside, isn't it lovely the Flames have a really good backup goalie at league minimum for another year?
Isn't it wonderful that they have a third string goaltender that's probably better than half the backups in the entire league? We don't know that for sure. He's got to play games there first. But Dustin Wolf is killing it.
Yeah,
Stockton third round playoff plug.
And you can catch those games on AHL.tv.
Yes, you can.
Watch the AHL.com.
You watch Future Flames, baby, because if we're talking about holes next year and saving money, big opportunity for Adam Ruzicka to show up to camp next year and actually be able to maybe stick around and play the whole season in an actual scoring line role. Yep. That's possible.
So anyway, but yeah, the kind of thing that's if you're trying to sell, if the idea is you're selling them on this is a place where you can win, you got to damn well bet that they're mapping out. They got the whiteboard out, they got the PowerPoint out, and they're walking these agents through. Here's what the team we think will look like in year 1. Here's how competitive we think we're going to be. Here's year 2. Here's year 3. Like if you're asking a guy to commit 8 years to your team, you want to assure him that you're going to be as competitive as you can for as long as you can. And I'll say this, I mean, if they can get those 2 deals right, they've done a pretty good job drafting and developing, and I think they can fill some holes without really killing themselves. And honestly, the fact that they got, you have a Coleman and you have a Toffoli.
You've got good guys next year.
Backlund, you got they have a lot of guys who can fill really distinct roles and do them well. And I think Toffoli with a year or with a good summer of training and in a summer to get used to Daryl Sutter hockey again could be pretty good. And I don't know. I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic, but I think the crunch point for people's optimism with the hockey team going forward will be getting those 2 boys signed for many, many years. And honestly, that probably, if we were in your shoes, we'd be feeling the same way. I mean, I know Shane does. I don't feel anything anymore.
It's just numb. It's just Pike's just complete numbness. It's like 5-3-5 head to toe every day.
I was sitting in the media room for the third period in overtime of Game 5 with Gene Principe and Jim Matheson and a few other media types, and the no goal. I'm like, interesting. How odd. I thought that would have counted. And then the overtime goal goes in. I'm like, okay, make sure I got the score right. Publish. You don't feel feelings anymore. That's
the way it is. It's I still got emotional. I'll tell you, I was at the TV and I'm like, come on, just give me a game 6. I'll tell you,
man. Overtime in decision games. Game 7 against Dallas was
Yeah,
You know, like it was.
I'm surprised it's still beating, to be honest with you.
It was no, but from a reporter standpoint, it's stressful because like I was like, okay, like we were texting before the game. I'm like, okay, I actually sat down and I prepped a bunch of stuff for if they win and a bunch of stuff if they lose, but you don't know which one you're going to go with because
Until they play the game, yeah.
And it's a late game at home on a Sunday, so it's like, what do you do? And even
and they go to overtime with 60 shots on net and it's tied, obviously. Yeah.
And then that's like it's like
oh,
it's like either they lose and you deal with the repercussions of not winning a playoff round in a million years, or they win and you deal with Edmonton now.
Yeah, Battle of Alberta time.
A lot more fun. So yeah, I'm it was a good ride. It was a fun ride, and I think this summer is going to be really, really interesting around the organization. There's a lot of cool stuff. They have an AHL team who's on an absolute heater, and they're playing the best AHL regular season team in the league. Stockton is 2, and the difference between the two of them wasn't that big. And Stockton has basically everybody available to them now.
Mm-hmm.
But Carolina lost, so does Chicago. So that's going to be a fantastic series. So
doesn't Chicago have which team has bits of Seattle's players?
That is Charlotte.
That's Charlotte. Okay, I knew it was a Shut team. I was like, there's another. Isn't Chicago? Chicago shared with Vegas for their first year. That's what it was.
Yeah. So if you don't follow Mike Gould or Paige Seward on Twitter, do so. They'll be all over this as it goes forward. Next year, Stockton, win, lose, or draw, move to Calgary. That'll be fun.
Yeah, AHL teams, future pros in Calgary, able to go watch. It's going to be fantastic. I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. And we got what have we got coming up? We got the draft, and then free. The Blaze might only get 3 players in the draft, but it's going to be an interesting draft. We got free agents.
I might trade down and try and get some extra. Maybe Brad's pretty good at getting.
You never know.
On draft,
and then, we might see some hockey trades too. And then free agency opens on July 13th. Then a little bit after that, we got salary arb. Then a little bit after, and actually, I think right after the draft, the Flames are holding a development camp here. The first development camp in person in like 3 years.
That's good for the prospects. Really, really, really good for the prospects, especially since the Flames reestablished what they want as their culture around the team. Really important to get that into these kids right away. This is what we expect as a pro. This is what we expect. Now that you know that, please go work towards it.
And I'll say this. So Stockton is playing the third round of the playoffs for a chance to play for the Calder Cup. Playing for the right now, actually starting on the weekend, playing for the Ed Chenoweth Cup in the Western League are the Seattle Thunderbirds playing against the powerhouse Edmonton Oil Kings. Edmonton Oil Kings are like a juggernaut. Like they're like
the old school London Knights when London Knights steamrolled everybody. They're that good.
Yeah. So, but the Flames have a prospect, Lucas Siona, who's playing a middle 6 winger role for Seattle. He is the things that the Flames like about Martin Possumstill, the things they like about Lucas Siona. He is a shit disturber. He's got some good hands. He scores some goals. He's big. He mucks around. He's got when he's healthy and when he's not taking too many penalties, he's in it. And he's been apparently from friends of mine who are watching the Thunderbirds up close and personal for the whole season. In Seattle, they love Siona. I keep getting texts after games where Siona plays, says, "You guys in Calgary are gonna love Siona," and I say, "I don't love anything anymore. Not since the lockout. I'm not
since the lockout." You know who's making a real statement? This isn't Flames related, and it won't be because it's prospect. He's a high end prospect, but Seattle making it as far as they have. And Kevin Korchinski's stock is raised. So wherever you see him, folks, on your draft rankings, if he goes 4 or 5 picks higher, don't be surprised.
So anyway,
lots of extra viewership
for those of you who we're generally, this is generally a Sportsnet family here. So everyone plugs their ears, Sportsnet friends. TSN is playing games 3 through 7 on, I believe they're supposed to be on over-the-air TV. I don't think they've nailed down the channel schedule yet, because there's like 15 TSNs now. But so game 3 is Tuesday, June 7th. That'll be the first game between Seattle and Edmonton that's on TSN. But starting with game 3 and going until it ends, the TSN is going to be covering the Western Conference League final. I think they're doing the OHL final too. I forget. So if you want to catch some good ass hockey, I mean, Edmonton probably will win that series, but if we're being honest, Seattle just won 2 series in a row.
Everyone
Started
wants
off
the
saying they
underdog, man. Underdog's fun, and we're a Flames podcast. We're a Flames website. So anytime Edmonton loses, it's just a bonus. So
no, and also I'll say this: like Portland was supposed to beat Seattle, and so was Kamloops. And
Kamloops especially was
Kamloops
supposed
was really
to.
good. So
Kamloops was should have, but that's what this is why we play the games, baby.
Don't count out the Seattle T-Birds. So well, we might as well start wrapping up. We're obviously there's gonna be less regular Flame stuff to talk about now that the season's over and the playoffs are over. So we're probably gonna move into a bit of a modified schedule. So our plan right now is basically we'll come back to do episodes and stuff happens. The 2 stuff happens previews we're planning on doing is right before the NHL draft. We'll do a draft preview of some sort where Shane and I will wax poetic about prospects we like. We might get Mike Gould on to wax poetic with us too, because he saw a lot of the Okotoks Oilers and a lot of the AJ this year, so he can he can stump for some of his favorites in the West, in the AJ and in other leagues. And then the week after that is going to be our free agency preview episode, because depending on what happens, the Flames might have a lot of things to do at free agency or nothing to do at free agency.
Well, that's the other thing. We haven't even mentioned this because we don't want to, but I'll say it. It could be blasphemy. If they aren't able to sign the guy they want to sign, that leaves cap space, which means if they get to free agency, they can do something else. I'm not going to talk about that until it's really, really, really close to happening, or write anything on it until it's really, really, really close to happening, because I don't want it to happen. And I very much want the other thing to come to fruition. But I'll say that is a possibility. If you're not going to give $10.5 million to the one guy, that's $10.5 million you could spend elsewhere. So
in other words, it's going to be a very interesting couple of months. So we'll be back with those 2 episodes when/if/when other news breaks of various circumstances. We reserve the right to do emergency podcasts here and there.
I'm not sure they'll hear much of us in August, Pike, but that's okay.
Oh God, in August. In August, all they're going to hear from me is me going up and watching the Backstreet Boys in Edmonton. That's all they're going to hear.
There you go.
They do a great live show, man. I'm excited.
I will never diss the Backstreet Boys. Backstreet is always back.
This is why we're friends. So anyway, that'll do it for episode 35. Episode 36 will come whenever we feel like it, but probably either when something incredible happens or right before the draft. One or the other. So as usual, FlamesNation Radio is brought to you by DoorDash. When you don't feel like going outside because, I don't know, you're cozy, you made a blanket for it. There's playoff hockey on. You don't want to leave your cocoon. DoorDash will help you out. DoorDash doesn't judge you. They understand. And also, Eau Claire Distillery, the makers of Rupert's Whiskey, the official whiskey of the Calgary Flames. It can be a celebration whiskey. It can be a sadness whiskey. It can be a contemplation whiskey. However you enjoy your whiskey, we don't care. It's tasty. Enjoy tasty things however way you wish to enjoy them, as long as you enjoy them responsibly and repeatedly. But hopefully, responsibly and repeatedly, balance each other out of it. So for Shane, I'm Ryan. Thank you all very much for tuning in during the past 35 weeks. It's been a fun show to do.
Good season.
It's given Shane and I a long time to chat. And the fun thing is, from a stuff to write about, talk about, click about, whatever about perspective, it's been a really fun year. We've done May 2022 was the single biggest month we've ever done in the history of the website. We did as much traffic in May as we did in some full years in our early years as a website, sometimes several years in a row. So we couldn't do it without you guys, the fans.
Yeah, the readers.
The fans. So on behalf of the whole team, everyone behind the scenes up north and down here in the trenches in Alberta, making the content for you, we really want to really thank you guys for engaging, clicking, reading, listening, commenting, angrily tweeting. Those folks when I was walking through the dome during game 5, the folks who fist bumped me in the thing and shouted, "Hey Pike, fist bump me." It was weird, but I kind of liked it. So
celebrity status, Pike.
Hey, no one shouts anything angry at me yet, but they shout Simpsons memes and get me to fist bump them. So that's always fun. But yeah, it's we couldn't do any of the things we do on the site without people reading and engaging, and otherwise just caring loudly about the game, about the team, and caring in really eloquent ways. So we appreciate it, and we hopefully will continue to keep the good times rolling. So again, for Shane, I'm Ryan. Thank you very much for listening. And we'll catch you guys next time, whenever that happens to be.